Welcome to the Courage Curve, a space for women who are standing at the edge of a shift or already moving through one. I'm Parul. My life has been shaped by steady decisions, inner resilience, and the moments where I had to choose courage long before I had clarity. Each week, I will speak with women who simply didn't arrive at a breakthrough. They built it step by step. From the outside, the transformation can look instantaneous, but together we will uncover the real story, the pressure, the truth-telling, the small choices that create the inflection point that we call the courage curve. Let these conversations stay close to you as you move through your own curve with strength, honesty, and companionship.
My guest today is someone who has sat at the highest tables in tech, not just once, but across multiple industries and orgs. Patty Hatter has been a CIO, a COO, GM, and a transformation architect at giants like Cisco, McAfee, and Palo Alto Networks. She's walked into chaos, built order, and left legacies of impact. But what makes Patty truly indomitable isn't just her resume. It's the grit and the reinvention. Today, we'll go behind the titles, into the breakdowns, the pivots, and the personal truths of one of tech's most formidable leaders. Good morning, Patty.
Good morning, Parul.
Thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you as a guest on my podcast.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So, Patty, tell us about you when you were young, your upbringing, and what were some of those experiences that kind of shaped that you are today?
Yeah. So great to be here. I grew up in a sleepy suburb in Pittsburgh. So for all the Steeler fans out there, go Steelers. I'm not sure if this is going to be our year, but we persevere. But my husband always likes to say I grew up in a bubble. It was like the best community. It really encouraged everybody, men, girls and boys alike, just felt completely enabled and supported. And especially, yeah, you and I have talked about this in the past, but especially with my mom, who, I still hear the voice in the back of my head of, you can do it. You can do it. You can do anything. And that, that encouragement, I think you don't sort of know how much it soaks into your mind when you're young, but you really appreciate it as an adult. So that was very happy childhood, doing a little bit of everything. A lot in school, a lot of sports, a lot of everything. And so when I was getting ready for college and you're thinking about, okay, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Um, my dad was an engineer, and so that was just the conversation around the house, and you just think, "Okay, well, he did it. I guess that's what we do. I'll do that as well." So I ended up at Carnegie Mellon, good Pittsburgh school, in engineering, and I really did not appreciate how much I had never heard, "Girls don't do this. Girls don't do this." Until I got to undergrad. And I guess I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was really gobsmacked around how my peers, my freshman peers were like, "Female, you're not gonna make it here." I actually had one guy say, "Save your parents some money, just transfer into a different major now." And I'm thinking, what are these guys saying? And it was interesting because that was the first time I really appreciated all the words from my mom and just the community that I grew up in of anybody can do anything they set their mind to. So then when you run into some amount of lack of encouragement or questioning, it doesn't even rattle you because your fundamental belief in, hey, I can do this is so strong. You just keep going. But that was literally the first time I had ever heard anything like that. But I always like to tell the story of the one gentleman who was really on me freshman year of save your parents some money, just transfer now. He failed out his second semester freshman year, and I lived on the dean's list. That's always a proud moment. So engineering seemed like a natural path. For me, that just worked out well.
What were they trying to have you not do? Just be in that major that you had selected, which was
Yeah, it was just they were sharing their experiences, so everybody has their perspective. And that I have to say, though, that was actually a blessing in disguise because then you realize, hey, people have different opinions. They're gonna say things. You just have to believe in yourself and just keep moving forward. So I put that in the category of weird at the time, but blessing in disguise.
that is interesting. Did it also fuel you in some way, going, okay, you think I can't do it, but I believe in that, or I believe in myself, so I'm going to prove you wrong?
It was just more an ignore. You do you,
Okay.
I'll do me. It's all good.
That's awesome. Okay. And then what happened for the rest of your time in school?
Yeah, CMU is a fairly nerdy, I
Mm.
guess you'd say, nerdy school, so it was all engineering all the time. I really did like it there and, ended up staying there for, grad school also, which I would say if I thought I was sort of an unusual being a female in undergrad,
Mm.
super unusual being a female there in, grad school, but like I said, thanks to my mom, the die was cast and just
Yeah. Right.
moved on, moved forward.
Isn't that so interesting? The influence or the impact of positive thinking or kind of reinforcing that within yourself that you're capable, such a difference it can make in everybody's life. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
I talk about this to other parents. It really is a lesson that your kids might not think they're listening to you. It might just feel like it's bouncing off. It is soaking in. It is soaking in. And the good things you say and the not so insightful things that you say.
Yeah. That's a great point to keep in mind, which is why, like, when I mentor people, I always tell them to surround themselves with people that believe in them and good people,
Uh-huh.
because
Yes.
your life is a reflection of your environment and your environment is a reflection of your life. So you want to make an effort to have good
Completely.
people around you.
Completely. Completely. It makes a difference. It makes a difference.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about how was it for you when you started working? So school was one experience, then you got into workforce, and I'm assuming you probably were the only woman in the room. So what was that like for you? How did you get your first job? How did you get your start?
Yeah, so, I went to Bell Labs, which was part of AT&T at the, time. It was a great place to get started at that point. It was such a mecca of talented people. So to be there, to be able to be working with very, very bright folks in all different disciplines, that was fantastic. I have to say, I took my, lesson from undergrad of you're probably the only female, and that's how it was, but you get used to it. I
Right.
didn't think about it, I didn't worry about it, just it was it was what it was, and you just move forward, and, there are actually times where it can be an advantage because 'cause you're probably gonna be remembered in those circumstances, so change the things that you can change, the things you can't change, just keep going.
Yeah. And how did you navigate it? So what were your first few years like when you started working? What were some of your memorable experiences?
I wish I could say this was something planned on my part, but I was incredibly fortunate to have the first boss that I did right out of grad school. So many different experiences because I started out as a systems engineer. So you're doing what systems engineers are doing, but pretty quickly after that I was able to start working directly with customers and then supporting the sales teams directly with customers, so really getting a world of experience across a lot of different industries in the US besides what sort of the normal early and stage folks at Bell Labs were able to see. So that was fantastic. Then the group I was working with, we were having some success bringing out Bell Labs technical resources to build out solutions for large enterprise customers. And so I still very early in career get to go into work on a Monday morning, and my boss, this fantastic gentleman named Bernie, calls me into his office and says, Patty, I have an idea. I'm like, I am all ears. So, what's your idea? He says, here it is. You go to Europe, you set up a business like we're starting to have in the US, and you come back. And that's my idea. When you have something like that, there are literally 1 billion reasons why that would be a risky career move. The sum total of my European experiences was 4 days in Munich after I graduated grad school. Okay, so no work experience in Europe, no knowledge of anybody in Europe, no knowledge of the markets in Europe. There were no resources there for me to immediately lean on. I'd have to try to make connections with other parts of AT&T, but it sounded fascinating. And again, in the back of my head is my mom's voice saying, "You can do it. You can do it. You can do it." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay. Like, what city should I go to?" And he says, "Well, pick one. Go.
Right.
Call me if you need anything."
How old were you at the time?
Late 20s.
Okay. So very young.
Yeah, 27. Yeah. So start making some phone calls, figure out what city's gonna make sense, where's a center of gravity where I can meet other folks, and went over there. And just when you think about it, it's just kinda crazy. Just launched myself there, started meeting people, got an office in the one of the main buildings with the most folks, and just started from there. And then, who are the sales folks I can meet? Where are they? Well, let me travel there. And this was one of the best things to learn, like, so early in your career is you just have to listen. The people that you're working with, you just have to listen. The prospects that you're trying to sell to, you just have to listen. They'll tell you what they need, and then you just have to find a way to get it to them. Phenomenal lesson, phenomenal lesson. And, also just Europe is generally similar to the US, but when you live there, you realize there are major cultural differences country by country. And if you're trying to fit in, make the transition as easy as possible, make the people that you're talking to as comfortable as possible. It's on you to figure out how do you shapeshift into a form that's gonna make most sense for the country that you're in, for the industry that you're speaking to that prospect about. You have to be a sponge. You just have to be a sponge. And yeah, a phenomenal, like, personal growth
Mm.
there, and just from a business perspective, could not have bought that experience if I had $1,000,000. Just incredible, just incredible.
You make it sound so easy. You make it sound like yes, you were very confident. Of course, you had a ton of courage. You go into an environment, you figure it out, but you were barely 27 at the time. Was there a time where you were like, oh, this is too hard. I can't figure something out? Was there any time where you felt you just couldn't keep going?
Not that I couldn't keep going. It's interesting you bring that up. There were a couple of very large contracts that we got once we got rolling, because I ended up there for 6 years, for, like, 2 different stints of 2, 3-year stints, and that's a whole story in and of itself. But by the second 3-year stint, we're landing sizable contracts in very important, European customers. And there was one where it gave me pause. The amount of visibility that we had within that customer, and then that was getting a lot of visibility within the company where I was working. Most of it was internal politics within my own company that was giving me pause because it was getting that much attention. But I actually remember the specific day where I thought, oh, might have made a step too a step too far on this one, but it all worked out because at a certain point, you can't back up, so you just have to keep moving forward. But it's interesting when I think about that now, it was more the angst of some of the internal corporate politics. It wasn't with the customer. We were just playing at a very senior level, so we had to, like, be on point, and we had mustered resources from not just Europe. We were hiring in Europe, but we were bringing, SMEs from the US also, but was the internal corporate politics of my own company that was the most challenging.
And we often found ourselves in situations like that. So, how did you navigate it?
There is an advantage of when you're with a a US-centered company and you live outside the US, you have a little bit more freedom, so
Right.
pushing the envelope, you just have to steer clear as much as you can.
And reorient the internal folks to the benefit of the customer and getting the customer what they need as an outcome in the end.
And everybody internally had to see some win for themselves. In the end, that helps calm everybody down if there's a good outcome for them or some positive press that they would get themselves, that helps sort things out. That usually helps to sort things out.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. What was that experience like? When did you choose to move on? And how did you choose sort of these really big roles? How did you stumble into becoming a CIO or a COO or a GM? So, how did that come about?
For everybody that's had an expat, I'll quickly mention my expat experience of coming out of being an expat. It's easier to get in than to get out.
Mm.
You know, I can't think of that many situations where when you're leaving, it's a graceful exit. For me, I had been in Europe for 6 years, and 6 years early in your career, when I got back, I felt more aligned to sort of the European sensibilities than the US sensibilities, and, it took a minute. So for all of your listeners that, have done those sorts of roles, for me, it was about a year before you really feel like you're settled back in, but at a certain point, it was easier for the company to just have me there and take care of things
Mm.
than have me come back, and so it was a pretty unceremonious meeting where I said, "I'm moving back." You know, we've had so many different plans of where I'd move back to and what role, move back to the US and in what role, that, when I had the final conversation of, "I am coming back. It's been 6 years. I have to get back." My mom is wondering if I'm ever coming back to the US at this point. So I just said Christmas holiday. So this was around Thanksgiving. I was based in London at the time, had some visitors from the US, and we had this conversation of come the Christmas holidays, I'm packing up my apartment. I am going to execute the plan that we had previously agreed. I'll move to Atlanta, do this other role, and I'm not coming back. I am now executing the I'm out of Europe plan. And that's sort of an awkward conversation because then the company had to scramble, but I have been trying to exit for 2 years. So it's a long time when you're putting your, like, personal life on hold and
Yeah.
you're trying to do what's best for the team you built there, for the company, for everybody, but at a certain point, it's like, "Hey, I have to get on with my life. I have to get back to the US," and awkward. There is a lesson in that. You have to in the end, you have to do what you're comfortable with, and you do the best you can for your team and your company, but 2 years of kind of floating, not sure when you're coming back, that it takes its toll because it's hard to do any personal planning at that point, so
Yeah. Yeah. To your point, sometimes you have to choose to put your personal life first because we oftentimes put our career first so much that we forget what is important to us. So sometimes you just have to kind of break that
Right. Right. Right.
and choose you as a private to people.
Yeah.
And
And for me and the different roles that I've taken, and you and I have talked about this before, that in my past, I've heard a lot of females be very planful of,
Mhm.
"Okay,
Yes.
here's every step in my career. I wanna do this, and then I'll do that, and then I'll do this." I don't know whether it's just me, and but opportunities present themselves.
Right.
And since we've been talking about Europe, when would that have happened again? If, that wasn't in my immediate line
Yeah.
line of view when that came up. If I would have said, no, my personal career plan is this, that, and this other thing, I would have never gone to Europe, which I can't even imagine missing out on that experience. So I'm more of have a general direction where you're trying to go, but then it's more around how do you take advantage of, not in a weird way, not in a sinister take advantage, but opportunities present themselves. How do you maximize that? How do you take advantage of, oh, I have this experience. I see this other opportunity. Let me try to get there. I've ended up in a lot of different spaces. And I remember I was talking to one recruiter. This was a few years ago. And he was even commenting, it was interesting. He's like, "I can see what you've been doing, but at first blush, it looks like you'll do this for a while, then you'll get bored, and then you'll jump over here, do that for a while." And I'm like, "Okay, it's not that I'm bored, but it's like I have this opportunity for a different experience that builds on what I know and
Yeah.
what I've done. Let me go do that. That would be great to learn." But that's me. If my career was only in like one straight line, for me, it wouldn't have been as fun.
I agree with you 100%. I think about my career the same way. My philosophy was often, what skill do I want to learn? And how can I maximize, to your point, learning that skill? And how do I create a broad portfolio? Because that's what having a strong foundation and a broad foundation will set you up for success no matter what you do, because you
Uh-huh.
tap into those experiences. So saying yes as opposed to saying no, I think
Right.
it gets harder as you kind of grow in your career. But I completely agree with you. That's been my motivation as well. You said something very interesting a few weeks ago when we were talking. You had this concept of failing forward. Not necessarily this was an event where you were failing, but even if things don't go your way exactly as you were thinking, failing forward, but in favor of your life. Tell me more about that concept.
Well, I think we were talking about that in terms of, taking risks in different roles. And, you can originally have a plan, and if plan 1 doesn't seem to be working out, you're learning, things are moving, adjust and keep going, adjust and keep going. And, um, I think there's, especially women, guys can do this too, but I know I hear this so much in females where they'll really beat themselves up on certain things of, okay, this didn't go exactly as planned. Okay, good. Then try something else. Try it from this angle, try it from that angle. And you just can't beat yourself up over something. You will get in your own head. And are you a Ted Lasso fan?
Yes.
So the one of the best things, funniest things, because I always believed it, I didn't compare it to a goldfish, but that one, episode about be a goldfish,
Yes.
take whatever lessons you can from, a loss or something that didn't go as planned. Take those lessons, internalize those, then forget it and keep going. Best lesson ever, best lesson ever. And I know for me, early in my career, I would just replay things in my mind, like little things. "Oh, I should have said that in a meeting," or this, or "I should have done that." Like little things, they would just get stuck in my head. Fortunately, I was able to sort of train myself to, "It's okay, forget it. It's okay, forget," like, you are the only person who noticed that. Just forget it and keep going. Like I said, I hear that come up with a lot of females because everybody's
Yeah.
trying to,
Yeah.
dot their I's and cross their T's. At a certain point, it's like, get the broad brushstrokes right and just keep going.
Yes, that comes from the weight of expectations that we all carry. Now, let's talk about that point because I get that question a lot as well myself because I'm kind of a rule breaker as well, right? How did you train yourself to forget so quickly? Let's dig into that a little bit so we can give more of a framework for anyone that's listening and want to practice it.
you know, this is just what worked for me,
Yep.
but I got very conscious of it. I'd have to consciously tell myself, "Nobody cared. Nobody cared about that." In the moment,
Mhm.
just when you're thinking about it, that first time it pops into your head of, "Oh, I should have said this word instead of that, or I should have done this instead of that." Like, just, "I got it. I'll do that next time." You kinda check it off your own internal mental list. At least for me, after a while I was doing it, it was really starting to annoy me, just get in my, own head about things. But, yeah, for me, just, like, okay, at the end of the meeting, next time I'll say something like this instead of something like that. I'll do something like this instead of doing something like that. Then it kind of, like, let me let go of, "Okay, I got it,
Yes.
moving on."
Yes. Acknowledging it and not making it bigger than what it was, or reframing it.
For me, it was more that's a very good word. It was more just, "Okay, I myself officially acknowledge next time I'll do this instead of that."
Yes.
Check. Moving on.
Exactly.
Moving on.
Exactly. I do that a lot too. And it's so interesting. If you give voice to your negative voice, it will just take a life of its own.
Exactly. Exactly.
And in my case, I apply the principle of an interrupt driven thinking, where if I would get a negative thought and I will tell myself consciously, that is not true, let it go. And then I would say that a few times, it doesn't come back. It is so fascinating. You can actually rewire your brain as you want it to work.
Right. Right.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about corporate world because that is so interesting, especially in today's day and age. So you've led at C level in many different organizations. So my question to you is, as you go into these organizations, roles are new. What is the playbook that you use when you inherit broken systems, perhaps underperforming teams? You could potentially have resistance, whether it's cultural, political, or personal. Maybe some examples of how you took a situation, used your frameworks, turned it around.
So, a couple things. Always you could never ask too many questions when you're taking on a new role from all different teams. I remember my first CIO role and I had already been at that company. I was head of operations and then I also got the CIO role. And at that point then I started calling around all the other business owners. And I was talking to, I so remember this. I was talking to the head of sales and I was asking him, "What do you think? What could we do differently? What are your biggest problems, relative to IT?" And he was a little taken back and he said, "Nobody's ever asked me that before." And I'm thinking, well, that's sad, but I want to hear like what is the experience from your perspective? And especially if you're in kind of a horizontal role where you're supporting other
Yeah.
organizations, the more you're able to put yourself in like your internal customer's shoes, what are they worried about? When they wake up in the morning, what's their biggest thing? What are they paranoid about? What are they concerned about? What are their measures that if they're able to achieve X, Y, and Z, that they're going to be super happy because then they'll make all their metrics for the year. You cannot underestimate developing the understanding to put yourself in other people's shoes, super important. That ties back to what you and I were talking about earlier of having different roles, because then it makes it easier for you to understand what other people are dealing with and how you might be able to support their function, support them, the more different experiences that you have. Because then you can say, I had this type of role that was sort of similar. I get why they're saying that. I get why they're behaving that way. It just makes it easier to relate to them
Right.
then, which I think is super important. So, ask questions, build that understanding of especially if you're in a support role, what are people needing from you and your team and how can you deliver that? The other thing I would say, and this has come up every role. But, if you're trying to do something new or build something, if you're trying to do anything, there's risks. You're going to take a direction. It may or may not work out. If it's not working out as you expect, then you've got to pivot. But it's not just you, it's the rest of your team that has to be willing to do that, and I find myself frequently, like, in all my roles over the past 10 years? More than 10 years, I've had the conversation with my direct reports of, "Hey, we're trying to get to the sharp end of the stick. There's a lot of different moving parts, and it's not gonna be the easiest path, but we've got to get there." I always make the point, and I say it sincerely so people can trust me, but if it doesn't go well, I'll be the one to say it. I'll be the one to take it. And if you can I think it's always people's responsibility to if the leader won't take the heat for something, how can you expect your team to? Fundamentally, I will never change on that. You need to take the heat. If you're a leader for the organization, things aren't going, you had a plan, you shifted the plan, it's still not going and there's some kind of blow up, you have to take the heat. I think that helps free your team to do what they need to do to, get the job done, because then it's one less worry on their side of, "I know we should be going down this path, but if we go down this path and then we have to pivot, I'm gonna have a lot of explaining to do." I just find it easier to say, "That's on me. If there's ever that's on me. You do what we know we need to do, and I'll take the heat. I'll manage the heat." I just think that's super important. If you're trying to do anything other than just kind of plodding along.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's one of the core characteristics of a leader. That actually brings me to a question that I don't have on my list. What do you think are the core, really important characteristics for a leader to have?
Well, I would put in the category we were just talking about, really leading from the front. You wanna listen to folks, but you have to paint a vision for what you're trying to do. Consistency, another point, consistency. If you want your organization to believe you're there for them, you need to demonstrate that on a day to day to day to day basis so they know, "Hey, when times get hard, I can count on this person. I know how they're gonna behave. I know what their values are because they demonstrate that to me." Because it doesn't have to be in, like, explicit, "Hey, I'm talking to you, and here are my 5 things." People take more your actions.
Yeah.
They believe actions speak louder than words. You need to say the words, "Here's what I believe in," but it's your actions. How are you behaving all the time? How are you treating people? That's how folks will really come to understand what's your fundamental core. What are you really about? And when times get hard, you need to have that common understanding with your team of, "Hey, this is how you can expect me to behave this way. You know me. I'm consistent. This is, I've got your back." And I frequently make the bank account analogy where
Right.
you're putting money in the bank account of trust that you have with your organization every day. Again, it's not so much the explicit words, it's the actions that everybody sees. Everybody sees. You can't hide that. So you're building your amount of money in that bank account because the tough times will come. When you need to make a shift that might not be popular, but it has to happen. Those are the times where you really need that trust build up, where you can say, "Okay, I've gotta take a little money out of that trust account right now because we have to go in this direction. We have to make that change." But if that fundamental core isn't there,
Yeah.
it's very hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the hard thing to do every day. Doing the right thing, I tell people, is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be authentic. You have to be consistent.
Right. Right. My next question for you: what is an example of something that looked like a setback, but turned out to be your greatest advantage?
So here's my goldfish. Here's the
Oh,
goldfish in
right.
me, going back to the Ted Lasso thing. I really choose not to think, here's a setback. I trend so much more on the other side. I've trained myself, or however I've gotten
Yeah.
there. Okay, I learned a ton.
Yes.
Did it work out exactly as planned? Maybe not. Learned a ton. So what do I do with those learnings? How can I shape shift from there? I just can't, just will not, cannot, choose not to, like, say, okay, here's a bad thing. I'm going to put a stamp on it. That was a bad thing. I just don't think like that right now.
That is so interesting. There's so much power in owning that, the way you are owning that. As in terms of reframing, so that it just completely changes.
What can I take that learning and how can I apply it to something positive now? And again, I think females do this more than guys, but there's so much negative stuff out in the world. You don't need to be contributing to branding things that then again get stuck in your head and cause challenges from there. So
Mm.
I fundamentally think in terms of what did I learn? What did I learn?
What advice would you give young people today who are either going into school right now or graduating, trying to enter workforce or are early in the workforce? There seems to be a lot of questions, a lot of struggle that I sense the youth. What advice would you give them?
The economy, there's a lot of different things happening in the tech world. Certain sectors are booming, other, roles or industries not so much. You just have to get started. You can't let yourself get sidelined. There's always economic ups and downs. I mean, the consistency of it, when you step back and look at decades of
Right.
economic performance and how the stock market moves and how the GDP growth moves, it's amazing. When you look back far enough, it's amazingly consistent, the
Mhm.
ups and downs. So for the kids coming out in a little bit of a tumultuous or worrisome, I don't know what we'd call what we're in right now, maybe worrisome market. You just have to find a way to get started. And because from there you build experiences, you build connections, and you can go from there. I think you and I have talked a lot, my philosophy of just like step by step, claw your way along. Don't think, if you're having trouble sort of getting launched into the market coming right out of school, pivot. How do I think about this differently? Because you just have to get started. You just need to get rolling, and then you can move from there. Don't worry so much about my role has to be like exactly in this box. It has to meet exactly this criteria. The big thing is just get started.
Yeah.
Get started.
And the box are changing on a daily basis. So even we don't know what these boxes are anymore.
Right. It is. It's the nature of the beast now.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to be, like, too exact, it's unnecessary angst, and you're not building any experiences, building your worldview of, "Okay, I can do this, I wanna do this, not that." You just have to, the important thing is to take a step, take a step, take a step, take a step.
Great. All right. We'll end on the rapid fire questions. Ready?
Yes.
What's a brutal truth of success no one talks about?
You do need to prioritize. You can't do 1,000% of everything all the time, and you need to prioritize and not feel guilty about it.
Great. What is one overrated advice you hear given to women in leadership?
So this goes back to, we've talked a bit about this, but I've heard a lot of, especially women when I was younger and still now, talk about be very planful. My view, I'm more of a take advantage of the opportunities as they come, because you would have never even thought some of these things would have presented themselves. Get out, look up, connect with people, set time aside to make those connections. Set time
Mhm.
aside and look up. Don't just get lost in the details.
Finish this sentence. To lead with power, a woman must.
Be comfortable in their own skin.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Believe in who you are. Trust
Uh-huh.
your guts. Okay. Awesome. Patty, thank you so much for making time. This was so amazing learning from you and your decades and decades of experience, intellect, and I guess the most important thing that I'm taking out of this conversation is the power of reframing your own narrative the way you want it to shape you. And you're a perfect example of embodying that. So thank you for being you.
Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, Parul, talking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Courage Curve. I hope this conversation offered you perspective, comfort, or a sense of companionship as you move through your own moment of change, especially if you're choosing courage before clarity. And remember, women rise best when we rise together. Follow the show and share it with a woman who may need it.